Hello, everyone. We can get started now. So thank you all for coming. To introduce myself, I'm Rachel Allen, and I'm currently the Interim Executive Dean here at St George's School of Health and Medical Sciences. And we have our new Executive Dean, Natalie Armstrong, in the audience too. So thank you, Natalie, for coming. We're here, hopefully, as you all know, for the inaugural of Professor Amarnath Bhide. And it's great to see you all here. And hello also to everyone who's online listening and watching in, as well as people who'll be watching on catch up later. We do it by all these different media. It's great to see you all. These inaugural lectures are very much a way for newly appointed or promoted professors to tell us a bit about themselves and their academic careers and journeys. This is the first one for our new season of promoted professors, so we're off to a great start. And it's really a chance to celebrate and to think about achievements and career paths and life in general. And it is lovely to see you all here. So about Professor Bhide, he's achieved many great things over his career leading to this professorship, so much so that I've been given a long list of his achievements, but I know you're here to listen to him and not me, and I don't want to steal his thunder when he goes through his talk, but just to highlight, he was born and raised in Mumbai and earned his medical degree at the University of Mumbai. As you will probably be aware, his interest has been in childbirth and women's health, leading him to specialise in obstetrics and gynecology. And he moved to the UK in 2001, and I think it's been St George's you've been based at since then, but has done some fantastic work. He's been involved in authoring, and his work has led to key clinical guidelines. I'm sure we'll be hearing perhaps some more about that in his lecture. He served as a scientific editor and also an editor-in-chief of AOGS. He's done so much over the years, and his expertise, it covers so many areas, things like fetal growth abnormalities, multiple pregnancies. So his research really spans a range of different aspects. He's got a fantastic publication record, 250 peer-reviewed papers. It may even have been increased from that, I don't know, since this was drawn up, and funding and research that's gone over the years. So I'm really looking forward to hearing all about it. After the talk, we'd like to welcome you for drinks in I think it's H0.1, 0.2, but we'll lead you in that direction afterwards. And after the lecture, we will have the vote of thanks, and thank you very much to Professor Ganesh Acharya for doing that. So really at this point, I'd like to say thank you all for being here. Welcome, and let's hear from our first new professor of the season. Over to you.
Thank you very much for Professor Allen, and good evening to everybody. I'd like to tell you a story of the ship of Theseus. According to Greek mythology, Theseus, the king of Athens, rescued youngsters from Athens, from Minos, by defeating him, slaying him, and he escaped in this ship of Theseus from Athens to Delos. The analogy is that my ideas, aspirations, desires, and thoughts have changed so much over time. So this ship was taken as a pilgrimage every year in the commemoration of his history from Athens to Delos. And as time went by, the ship needed repair and replacements, and plank by plank, the ship was repaired and replaced. Ancient philosophers asked this question, that if no part of the original ship made the ship as it is today, is it still the ship of Theseus? So my analogy is my career. My ideas, aspirations, dreams, and thoughts have changed over time a lot. So am I still myself as before? So that brings me to where I was born. So this is the part of Western India. This is the city of Mumbai, where I was born. And I had a very happy childhood. I was in a family, it was a joint family in those days. It was very common to have joint families. So there were more adults than children in the family, and I was pampered like anything in the family. You see here me with my mother and my grandfather, I'm in his arms there, and my grandmother over there. So speaking of my family was heavily into music. They ate, drank, breathed music. Everybody in the family was involved in music. And you see my mother there, she was an accomplished vocalist of Indian classical music. She did very well. She was a well-renowned teacher. She taught many students, including my sister, who you see here. And my sister now is a very well-known singer and exponent of Indian classical music. My auntie, she was also sang. My father was, by profession, he was a physics researcher in India's apex research institute, the Baba Atomic Research Center. But he also was an accomplished sitarist. Sitar is a string instrument made famous by the famous Ravi Shankar. So you see, my background was music and physics. And indeed, in school time, my favorite subjects were mathematics and physics. So when I came to what is equivalent to A levels, I decided to go into engineering. And I managed to secure an admission into what is the Oxbridge of India, the Mumbai Indian Institute of Technology, IIT. And there comes a time where you make some decisions and people think you're crazy. So during our summer holidays, we used to go to this place called Kolhapur, which is not very far from Mumbai, but my mother's hometown. And we used to spend our summer holidays there. And in that summer holiday, my mother's cousin, who's newly qualified obstetrician and gynecologist, had started a nursing home of a maternity home of his own called the Matrubal Hospital, Dr. Nagaonkar. So in my free time, I went over and I was given access to his nursing home, maternity home, and his operating theater. And things just changed. I decided to forego my admission into Indian Institute of Technology and joined medicine. And people thought I was crazy to give up the admission there. So that is one plank changed of my ship. Anyway, after that, I got admission to the Edward's Memorial 7th, King Edward the 7th Memorial Hospital and St. G.S. Medical College. It was the most favored medical school in Mumbai, perhaps the whole of country. And that is where I did my undergraduate education. And as time goes, I acquired many friends, and that's me, by the way. So I had acquired many friends, and we not only competed with each other, because my medical school was extremely competitive, very competitive. So we competed with each other. By competing, we excelled. All of us did. So we challenged each other, we supported each other, and we have managed to keep in touch. So this is a photograph taken almost 20 years after that. So our group has still managed to keep together. Of course, there have been additions of other halves, but we still are in touch. And we are scattered all over the world. So 3 of them are practicing in Mumbai. I'm here in the UK, and Prashant practices in the United States. So during one of his visits to India, he passed over a set of 5 articles to me. And these articles were about medical statistics. And that was my first introduction to medical statistics. And when I read them, I really got interested. In medical school, we were taught statistics, but we were only taught it to hate it. This is the first time I realized that medical statistics can be fun, and it is an extension of common sense. So you don't have to be bogged down about formulas and numbers, but it should make sense. So what I have inherited from my father is this sense of logic. He's a very logical person. It's quite difficult to argue with him. In fact, you can argue, but you can't win. So that is what has been happening, and that is what I have inherited from him, the sense of logic. And I hope I have got at least some of it, a part of it, from him. I've also got some non-medical friends, and here is Mohan. I met him, accidentally discovered him in the UK, because the last I met him was, or knew of him, was he had migrated to Japan. And suddenly out of the blue, he appeared in the UK, tracked me down, and then we have kept in touch. So after my undergraduate education, I stayed in the same institution, that is the King Edward VII Memorial Hospital, and I entered my postgraduate education, and that was in obstetrics and gynecology. So as you can imagine, I had kept up music part of it, and that's me again, playing an Indian instrument called the sarod, which is very similar to the sitar. And there came a time where I was seriously considering giving up medicine and taking music as a career. I talked it over with my father, and my father said, okay, but what are you going to do? You can do music, but what are you going to do for a living? So no, I'm planning to do music to make a living. And I said, okay, if you're prepared to remain single all through your life, you can do that. But my advice would be, it is a really bad idea. So I thought about it and I said, no, I don't love it as much so as to remain single for the whole of life of me. And I decided to shelve that idea. And then I started my postgraduate education. People who have influenced me most in my postgraduate education was this person, Dr. Sharad Shah. Not many of you know him, but he was a fantastic surgeon. As if whenever he operated, he was very quick, but it didn't feel as if he was quick. He didn't take shortcuts. His movements were not hurried, but still, if you look at the clock, operation is over. He was so quick. And there was one downside to it. It taught me a lot of things, a lot of my surgical techniques I've developed through him. The downside of that is that he didn't have any complications. So it was difficult to learn, because complications is what teaches you what not to do, and if it happens, what to do with that. My other boss was Dr. Sarogi. Unfortunately, Dr. Sharad Shah is no longer with us. He's passed away. He was often termed or called as the Shirodkars of the suburbs. Now, Shirodkar, I'm sure the large part of the audience will know, very famous from the cerclage operation. But I think it's a bit of a disservice to him, because he was far more than that. He was there in his own capacity. Anyway, Dr. Sarogi was the other boss, and what I have learned from him is that he was unfazed. Whenever we had a complication, we would go to him and tell him, sir, there is a problem. The good part about him is that he would never get angry. He would just listen to us and say to us what to do. In fact, he looked at all complications as if it was a challenge. In fact, it looked sometimes that he was hoping that we would make some complications so there would be a challenge to solve. That's what I have learned from him. In those times, in that time in India, becoming a doctor meant that you treat more and more patients, operate more and more, get your skills up. And that's how you become a good doctor. This person, Dr. Parulekar, was another boss of mine. He introduced me to academic writing. My first paper I wrote with him while in India. So I owe him a lot for that introduction. So then I qualified. In India, MD is the qualification. And then I joined this institution, Amarnath Bhide Maternity Hospital. It's a standalone maternity hospital in Mumbai in 1990. And I spent 10 years over there. Now, this hospital was quite unique. It was perhaps the most well-known public maternity hospital in Mumbai. It was a busy hospital as well. We used to be looking after approximately 1,000 women per month. That means 12,000 women a year. And having spent 10 years over there, got my clinical skills up to date so that by the time I came to the UK, there were very few complications that I had not already faced. So I was okay. I was fine. Nothing would scare me anymore. So that is something that I learned at the Wadia Maternity Hospital. I spent 10 years over there, progressed in my career. I started as lecturer, senior lecturer, associate professor, professor and chief of unit in 1999. So that is where I ended my India career. While in maternity hospital, I owe a lot to this person, Dr. Daftari, who was the dean of my hospital at the time. Visionary man. He saw what possibilities there are. And at the time, we are talking of early 1990s, minimal access surgery was very new. And ultrasound was also new. Now, I had an advantage because it was a standalone maternity hospital. There was no radiology department. And in those days, all ultrasound was done by radiologists. But in my hospital, no radiologists. So only radiologists which would come to the hospital were visiting ones. So he saw an opportunity there and he encouraged us to learn ultrasound as obstetricians. So we must be one of the first few obstetricians having to do ultrasound ourselves, and we had to learn from the radiologist. So there were two other lecturers with me, Noza Sheriar and Kaiser Damania, and all three of us were known as Three Musketeers doing ultrasounds there. And we used to see so many patients there. I've lost count. So he saw that opportunity. He gave us that opportunity for learning ultrasound. He also encouraged, with my colleague, Dr. Desai there, to go abroad to learn minimal access surgery because it was the beginning of minimal access surgery. It was not there in India at all. So he encouraged us to go abroad to centers of excellence. And we visited centers of excellence abroad. While I was working over there, I came across this man as well, Dr. V.N. Purandare. Now, he had retired by the time I started, but he used to come from time to time and operate on some patients there. And I made it a point to assist him always. So he was a master of vaginal surgery. Vaginal surgery was very much advanced in India at the time. And those of you from the obs and gynae crowd know that you would rather not assist in vaginal surgery. It's not great for your back. But what I got back from him was much more than my back problems. So I made sure that I assisted him. He was such a talented person that tissue planes almost opened spontaneously when he started to operate. He taught me one thing. He taught me that before you cut anything, he told me, you must know what you're cutting. You cannot say it's tissue, it's a muscle. You have to know what it is. So it taught me the importance of learning surgical anatomy and learning about tissue planes. These were a few other of my bosses. And from each one of them, I have learned something or the other. For example, Dr. Nanavati, who we see here, in those days in India, he taught us how to talk to patients. And that was not something which was taught in India at the time. And I'm not sure it is taught even now, although it is taught thankfully in the UK, but it was not. So he actually told us, or not told us, but he showed us how to deal with patients, not to look at patients as patients, but as individuals. And that was something new. While I was working in the Wadia Maternity Hospital, you see this building over here, which was across the street from me. That was the Institute of Research and Reproduction. And that is the library over there. The reason why I'm putting up this slide is because in those days, it wasn't a done thing for doctors to go to library and read. Once you have qualified, you sort of practice and you learn from your practice. But the library was there, and it was a very well equipped library. It had journals in it which otherwise were difficult to find in India. And I used to frequent this place quite often. While I was in the library one day, I came across this book, the first edition of the Guide to Effective Care in Pregnancy and Childbirth, what we now know as the Cochrane Handbook. So when I got this book in my hands, I was intrigued and frustrated in equal measures, because whatever was taught to me seemed to be wrong if you started reading this book. And I didn't know what to believe, because really the medicine at the time was based on logic. If it made logical sense, that must be a good thing. Just to give you an example, and I'm sorry for the obstetrics crowd over here, but women who experienced intrauterine fetal death stillbirth often reported reduced fetal movements some days prior to that. So logic tells us that if we ask women to count movements, it should save lives of babies, right? Wrong. There was one brave man, Adrian Grant, who did a multi-center trial and published his results. And what does the trial show? Whether you ask them to count movements or not, the stillbirth rate is the same. So this is to just give you an example. This was the beginning of evidence-based medicine. And that was not something which was common knowledge. People didn't think about that. They didn't think along those lines. Another plan changed. And that kind of transformed me into thinking differently, thinking in terms of what works and is there any evidence that what we think works, does it actually work? So that is what came from there. I told you that at the time I was doing minimal access surgery, very excited. I was young, I was enthusiastic, it was something new, and you could show things. It was as if you could put up a performance by doing minimal access surgery. And also at the time, I was doing ultrasound and prenatal diagnosis. And there was a choice to be made. I can't do both. I had to do either this or that. So when I was pursuing minimal access surgery, Dr. Daftari encouraged us to go abroad and train. So this place is Clermont-Ferrand. I don't know, many people know about it, in the middle of France, but very well known at the time for minimal access surgery. The other place was Kiel in northern Germany. That was also very well known. So we spent some time over there learning about minimal access surgery. There were two things which happened, which made me give it up and move away from minimal access surgery to ultrasound and prenatal diagnosis. One was I realized that minimal access surgery was more to do with skills than use of intellect. I'm sorry for the gynecologists over here. That is my impression. Yours may be different. Ultrasound and prenatal diagnosis was skills and problem solving, puzzle solving in equal measure. The second one was a very sad, tragic case, which happened. I was looking after somebody, a young woman who came with ovarian mass. And I operated on her using the laparoscope. In those days, we are talking of very early 1990s. The facilities were not there, as many facilities were not there, so there was no such thing as endobag, nothing of that sort. So I operated on her, and I was feeling very chuffed that I managed to sort it out using the laparoscope, avoided laparotomy. It so happened that within 2 years' time, she presented back with disseminated intraperitoneal ovarian cancer. So I don't know if the same thing would have happened regardless, but I felt responsible. And that one case was enough for me to give up minimal access surgery. I decided not to pursue it further because I had something else to do, prenatal diagnosis and ultrasound. Now in India, I had by the time got to the position of professor and unit chief, but there were a few things which were niggling at the back of my mind. One thing was that I was doing a lot of cases, and I was doing CVSs, amniocentesis, fetal blood sampling, intrauterine transfusions, but I had no one to ask if I had a problem. I was learning from my mistakes, and that is very painful. You can't make mistakes and learn because it's at a cost of something. So that was one. The second was that I wanted a publication, because if I call myself a professor, I have to have publications. And I sent several manuscripts, everything came back. And I realized it's not possible. There was nobody to ask, nobody to guide. And the only way forward for me was to go abroad or to look for some place where I can get some more. So this is the Institute of Immunohematology, which was very close to my hospital, and they used to send patients to us. There's a fair load of hemophilia and thalassemia, particularly in India. And these patients used to come, they were developing prenatal molecular diagnosis in those days, and they needed samples. And all those patients came to me. So I used to do CVSs and fetal blood samplings and amniocentesis, and I used to give samples to them. So that is how I honed my skills of needling and invasive prenatal diagnosis. But I told you what was niggling behind my mind. So there was no other way but to look elsewhere. So while I was working in Wadia Hospital, I managed to get a membership examination because the rules of college had changed, and I could still do membership without being working here. So in 1998, I got my membership examination, which opened up some doors and also introduced me to some people. And these two people were responsible. Professor Campbell, which many of you know, he did a workshop because I invited him to do a workshop at Wadia Medical Hospital. And it was because of Geeta. Geeta introduced me to him. She is still working with us and our colleague. So I said to Prof. Campbell that, look, Prof, this is what is lacking. I'm looking for more prenatal diagnosis. So he said to me, okay, if that's what you want, you need to write to Bhaski Tilaganathan. Okay, I said, okay, I will write to him. I said, wrote to Bhaski that I want to come to see. As a visitor, I want to come and see. He was very hard to get. He said, no, we have no vacancy for a year and a half. You can't come. Anyway, beggars can't be choosers. So I said, okay, whenever you got a vacancy, I will come. So I turned up whenever there was a vacancy. And since 2001, he used to look like that. He was as charming, as dominant, and as persuasive as he is today. So I started off here as a lecturer. So that was a big step down for me. Working in India as professor and chief unit, coming here to work as lecturer. And that is the second time when people thought I was crazy. People said, why are you doing this? Why are you putting making your life difficult? It has taken 20, 25 years for this university to recognize that I've got what it takes. Anyway, it has happened, but that's another story. So I owe a lot to Bhaski Tilaganathan. I was his first subspecialty fellow. After that, I was his colleague, and we worked for a long time together. Now, having worked for a long time together has made us look at many problems fairly similarly. So we look at many problems more or less the same way, but not always. So we do have our differences, and I enjoy our differences more than I enjoy agreeing with it, because that is what challenges the mind. And having a difference of opinion and being able to argue is enjoyable for me. So he's looked after my career. He's helped my career in a big way, and I owe a lot to Bhaski's help at the unit. When I joined, Professor Sir Arul was head of department here. And Arul has lots of qualities, and I need not tell all of them to you, but I pride myself in calling him his lecturer. He looks out for opportunities for his friends and colleagues. So that's something that I've learned from him. Julini Carvalho, who's still working over here, a lot of cardiology that I know, I've learned from her. Now, there's no doubt about her knowledge about cardiology. But what struck me as something unique was I have not seen anybody else who is a master of the equipment that she uses. She's so fast in altering the presets of the machine that you lose track, but she optimizes the image and gets everything that she can get out of the machine. I have not seen anybody as proficient in that as she is. So that's not to say that she's not skilled in her work. I'm saying that is her specialty that struck me. Brian Hollis at the bottom. He was my colleague at the time. Now he's migrated to Australia. He taught me how not to take life too seriously. Every time I meet him, he is always jolly, cracking jokes, and he continued to meet every year he attends the ISRO Congress, and it's a pleasure to meet him. Then Tony Penna joined us. It was a loss to us when she went to King's College, but it was a joy to work with her. She taught me how to not yield to undue pressure, not how to stand up for herself. She was a no-nonsense woman, and God help somebody who crossed paths with her. The department soon grew, and then we got Aris Papageorgiou, we got Samina Masood Dornan, it grew further, and then we got Asma Khalif, who's here today, Alex, who's here today, Bev, and Anna Pinas. All of them are here today. So it's become a big department. But to tell you or show you how the department looked, this is a picture taken in 2010. And lots of faces over here you can see even now in the department, and particularly in this lecture theatre. So this department was like a family, and it has given me so much warmth and love, and I've always felt wanted, and I wanted to stay. And that was one primary reason I've managed to stay on and keep working here. The other reason being that they have not managed to get rid of me, but that's a different part. When I was working in India, I was learning Doppler sound from other people. I realized that each one of them was doing things differently. So I got so frustrated. I went to the library and I read up every paper on Doppler that I can get my hands on. And from there, I developed this passion that there has got to be a standardization as to how to do Doppler examination. And this was the result of that. In 2013, we published this guideline. So I had to get hold of a big number of world authorities and produce this guideline. That exercise taught me a lot. How to deal with people, how to get work done, how to do collaborative work. So it has taught me a lot. It remains as one of my highly cited papers, and it is popular. It's recently been updated. So it is evidence that people still find value in it, and it is still needed. Around the time placenta accreta spectrum was a newly found problem.
Yeah, I'll get the biscuit. Yeah. Just
there were papers in the literature, and nobody was quite sure as to how to diagnose. So we sat down and decided to look at it systematically. And the outcome of this is the systematic review. Although this has been published in 2013, despite it being a systematic review, whose life is quite short,
maybe we
this
scrap
keeps
the whole
being cited.
registration form thing and just.
So this is another of my very highly cited paper, and this started my interest with the placenta-accreta spectrum. After that, I sent an article about standardization of terminology of what placenta-accreta spectrum is, because in those days people used to think that placenta-accreta is like cancer. It can eat into tissues, it can go elsewhere, it can go into the bowel, it can go to the bladder, it can go to the rectum. Now we know it doesn't. It's not cancer. The problem is not with the placenta. The problem is with implantation site. And that's something which was not known at the time, but still there was a lack of standardization. So I sent this article to the White Journal, and they accepted as an editorial. So I do remain proud of this one, because what we argued there was what matters is not histopathological diagnosis. What matters is what is clinically relevant. What gives you problems when you come across it? What gives you trouble when you try to deal with it? While I was working on placenta accreta, I came across this man, Eric Genu. Eric Genu is a professor in University College Hospital, very talented scientist. And with him, we did this guideline for the Royal College. Now it's been taken up by NICE about placenta previa accreta diagnosis and management. And there's a update of this guideline coming up now. So apart from his intellect and clinical acumen, what he has taught me is how to look at any manuscript. Incidentally, he was a co-editor with me at the British Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology. So my view of looking at any manuscript was at the time, is to focus on what is wrong with it. What doesn't make sense? So I was more or less critical about it. He, for the first time, showed me how to find value in anything. If you give him a manuscript, he would first focus on what is good about it. And that's something that I have learned from him. With him, we also did this guideline for FIGO, about accreta spectrum again. And then we published our experience about first 50 cases of the triple P procedure. Till then, treatment of accreta was hysterectomy, remove the uterus, remove the placenta, remove everything. But for the first time, we published our results showing that conservative surgery works. And at least in selected cases, it does work. I'm also proud to be on this guideline by the Society for Maternal and Fetal Medicine, an American organization where I was nominated by the International Society of Ultrasound and Obstetrics and Gynecology. I'm very proud to be on the authorship of this guideline. Following that, we published our experience about screening for placenta previa, placenta accreta, and we published cases of about 60,000 cases, and our experiences how to screen for it, how to diagnose it. This is something also I'm proud about. This is a collaboration that I set up between Argentina, Colombia, and Indonesia. And this is a randomized control trial, first randomized control trial, which showed that randomized control trial on therapy for placenta accreta spectrum is possible. We showed that whether you do hysterectomy or whether you do conservative management can be done in at least half. So there's no need to remove the uterus of each and every woman. Following that, there have been many invitations to write about it, and that is a review that I did not so long ago. In 2007, I applied to be the scientific editor of the British Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and I met Professor Phil Steer, who I'm very fortunate to have here in the audience. I haven't seen anybody who's as clear in his thinking, analysis, and writing. He taught me, although we have not worked clinically together, he's showed me how to think, how to analyze, and how to get the gist of it. I've learned so much from his reviews. Sometimes I send papers for reviewing to him, and I've learned so much from that. How to find the salient features of it in a very short space of time. So he was at the British Journal. I started there, and I have considered him as my mentor, whether he likes it or not. Fortunately, he hasn't protested, so I'm thankful to Professor Stier for that. Sometimes small things happen by chance, and they leave a big impression on your career and life. And that's what happened when I met Ganesh. Ganesh is also here with us, and I'm thankful to Ganesh for that. So we met in 2006, I think, in a ISWA Congress, and we met at coffee break. We saw each other, started talking, started exchanging ideas, and he told me about his work in animal physiology, and that interested me. I said, "Can I come? Can I have a look?" And he accepted me with open arms, and that's me again in Finland, and you can see with the snow around. I went to see the animal experiments, and this is the group after one successful session of experiments there. You can see Ganesh, you can see Juara Sanen, who is a professor in Helsinki. At the time, he was not in Helsinki, but now he is, and other colleagues. So I got involved with that group. I started doing work there. And animal physiology interested me a lot. And then came another time where people think you're crazy. So Ganesh persuaded me to do a PhD. And people ask me, why are you doing it? Are you mad? What are you going to gain out of it? Anyway, I did it. So this is me defending. I had to do a public defense. And that was these are my opponents there from Denmark and from Norway, Niels Uldberg and Guttorm Haugen. And that's the result of that. So I remember this photo was taken at the party of my PhD. We must have finished my party just after midnight. And we came out, there was bright sunlight because this happened in the city of Tromsø. And that's what happens when you go north of the Arctic Circle. So that is what happened there. And then at the persuasion of Ganesh, I accepted a position in ACTA, Obstetricia Gynecologica Scandinavica, which is a Scandinavian journal, as a deputy chief editor. And last year, I was offered to be the chief editor of the journal. And it was very moving to me. I don't work in Scandinavia. I'm not Scandinavian. But still, they showed confidence in me for me to take this up. So I'm looking at it, looking forward to the challenge. I don't know whether I'm going to be up to it or not, but I have accepted it. So I've got to do what I've accepted to do. I'm working with this team of very talented scientific editors, associate editors. Each one of them is professor in some university in Scandinavia, in Finland, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Iceland. So I'm really looking forward to that. To tell you a little bit about what is happening with my research work at the minute, we are looking at fetal heart rate variability in the antenatal period and fetal well-being. I borrowed these slides from Claire, who's working on a MD on that. And the idea is that this equipment here, which is made by a Singapore-based company, the equipment woman takes home. And when she puts it on her tummy by herself, and then we are sitting wherever, at home or in the hospital, we are getting that. The red thing is the fetal heart rate. The black thing is the maternal heart rate. Everything is happening remotely over cellular network. Isn't it fantastic? Of course, there are problems. I mean, the older technology used to be using ultrasound, but this is not using ultrasound. This is using ECG, fetal ECG taken from the mother's tummy. So there are problems, and the research is about solving those problems. Of course, the variability matrices that were used were ultrasound-based. Now we are ECG-based, so that those need to be validated. So we're working on that. This is Becky. Becky Liu is another colleague of mine, and she was awarded an MD not very long ago on part of the same research. And Claire is now extending that research on antenatal fetal assessment using ECGs. Other part of my research is about midwives using handheld ultrasounds for presentations at term. And National Institute of Health Research has given me and Christoph Lies. Christoph Lies is professor at Imperial College. So two of us are chief investigators on this project, about £2.5 million to look at this. It's an ambitious project. We want to enroll approximately nearly 10,000 women from all over the UK to validate this, that midwives can use it and they can use it accurately. So it's already started and we are recruiting to this particular project. Now, clinical work was going on one side. The books also came along and there were a fair chunk of them. But what I'm particularly proud about is this one, Practical Guide to High-Risk Pregnancy and Delivery. So I got introduced to this by Dr. Daftari in its 3rd edition. And I like it because that was a Bible for us when I was in my medical school. Everybody read this. It was such a good book, and I was fortunate to be associated with that. So the 3rd edition has come. After that, 4th has come, 5th has come, and now we are on the 6th edition, which was released this year. So I'm very, very grateful for that association. When I decided to come to the UK, I gave some things up. I had to give some things up. One thing that I had to give up was vaginal surgery. The other thing that I had to give up was this work that I used to do while I was in India in a place called Bhuj. Bhuj is in Western India, not very far from the birthplace of Mahatma Gandhi, Porbandar. Not very far from there, but it's very remote and it's very poor part of Gujarat. So poor that patients don't even have money to come to the hospital, even if there's a hospital there. So some business people from that area had a vision in their mind. They wanted to make medical care facilities available to them. So they started this in this hospital here in Bhuj. And they invited me and some of my colleagues to come and try to help them. So we went over there and asked women, what is it that you would like? And they said to us, this area is people are not very educated. They're farmers in general. Contraception is not very prevalent. So prolapse is very, very prevalent. And they told us that our problem is that when we squat while farming, the prolapse touches the ground. So do something about it. And the only way to do something about it is to operate and do a major operation. But it was risky to do because this hospital was about 2 hours drive from blood bank. And every woman that we saw, hemoglobin was maximum 9.5. So we had to make a decision to operate on these women under those circumstances. And there was no full-time staff there. So we used to go, operate, and come back. To show you the situation or the conditions there, this is indoor accommodation. But during the time of camps, that is what happened. People were accommodated in camps. So we had a celebration of first 100 cases operated without complications. And that's something that was very close to my heart. I wish I used to go there 2 or 3 times a year. And I had to stop that because I couldn't go any longer. I got the feeling of achievement by just going there. It was completely voluntary. There was no money changing hands. This is the picture that was taken late last year. All the fellows who've gone, not all, many fellows who've gone through our unit, and some of our sonographers are also here in this picture. So there's so many who we have been associated with. Similarly, that's a picture that was taken a few years ago when I was visiting India, and these are people where I have been associated with in India, and we still keep in touch, and they still feel like coming to speak with me and spend time with me, and I'm grateful for that. So we are still in touch, and we do get together when I go back to India from time to time. So looking back if I concentrate on people who have had the maximum impact on my career, Dr. Sharad Shah, I've told you about him. Dr. Sarogi, I've told you about him. Dr. Daftari, I've told you about him. Dr. Purandare, I've told you about him. Vaski Tilaganathan has had a major impact on my career. And then Ganesh Acharya and Yuhara Sanan, who are my PhD supervisors. Now, I cannot help but not mention Priya. Priya has been with me for so many years. She's my friend, my companion, and my competitor. She's very competitive. She's managed to stick with me in spite of all my shortcomings, and I rarely get a chance to thank her. So thank you for bearing with me. And she's given me two, I can't call them children, they're women now. And I'm so happy that they have done so well in their respective careers. They have done extremely well academically. They remain my critics, particularly when it comes to fashion and fashion advisors also. But they also are parts of my fan club. So thank you. This presentation, my daughter has formatted the whole thing and sent it to me. So I take no credit for it. Now, becoming a professor comes with some perks. One perk is that I'm hoping that I will get a nicer ID card where my face is really seen. The second perk is I get to I can use it as an excuse, because I'm sure I've forgotten to mention people who have had impact on my career. I'm sure of that. So at least I can say absent-minded professor, but there are people, I'm sure of it, have had have impact on my career who have forgotten to mention. And at the end, I want to thank all of you, including my friends, family, and some of my non medical friends like Mohan and people. So thank you for coming. I take you back to the ship, and I would like each of us to ask yourself. I'm sure things have changed with you. Many planks have been replaced. Maybe the whole ship has changed. But is the ship the same one? I know the answer to that. You're going to find an answer to yourself. Thank you very much for giving me a
Thank you for a fantastic presentation. I would not say I know more about you now after this presentation, but it was very inspiring anyway. I am Ganesh Acharya, dear distinguished guests. I am privileged to have the honor of proposing a vote of thanks for Amarnath Bhide's professorial inauguration today. You get surprised sometimes, but there is nothing more satisfying than your students beats you. And this is one. Amar told me how we met. He came to Norway. Actually, I have been working in London around London for 7 years before I left UK and went to Scandinavia in 2001 and to the most northern part in the world. And Amar came to chase northern lights. That mission is still not accomplished. His wife has seen northern lights. There are many northern lights. That is the place where you see northern lights actually from. But he has not. So one has to say that hate and the luck are two different things. Amar has not seen snow in his life. When he saw frozen sea in Finland, he was surprised. I have never seen a frozen sea before. But in this place, he did not see frozen sea, but he was there. He saw a lot of snow. Eventually, we persuaded him to go to Finland to do research. He was a very, very careful observer. Impressive. It did not take me much time to pursue him to take a challenge, as he told. He finished his PhD within a few years, but I knew him as a student, but he was my teacher. He also started already to supervise some PhD students in Finland by the time he finished his PhD. And she has already finished her PhD, by the way. He's a good friend. He's a fantastic friend. He smiles. He does not laugh. He just smiles all the time. Very restrained gentleman. And he's a good colleague to many. I have seen other aspects of him as my deputy chief editor for past 7 years, as a co-editor for a few years in British Journal. And he has big strengths. That is a good structure, love for quality, and some exposure. And I am looking forward to see his academic career grow further and further. He's good at leading, and he will become a leader in this field too. It has taken him for a while to get here. I know it's taken some while, but do not despair. It does not matter how slowly you go, as long as you do not stop. Thank you, Amar. And thank you.